But what does QBO Plus just have, getting out of bed in the morning that I can do for maybe lighter job costing? And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Pro Advisor, I basically just take the QBO Cert exam. I don't do a lot with desktop, but I still have it installed, etc. Try to keep up on the what's new, Been with Intuit since 04, and I've been using desktop since about 05, and QBO since 09. But you're probably still smarter than me. I would guess that's mostly true on most days. And I still do the QBO show with Stacy. You can find out more about that at radiofreeqb.com. And you can feel free to view that matrix there. It's not downloadable, but it's an online spreadsheet, right? So it compares about 140 different feature sets across the QB ecosystem. So feel free to leverage that. And that's you can find that in that link. And there's a lot of other stuff in this deck too, like I said. So please download it. And if you can't, then email me later. So today, again, this ties off the webinars for this week, service-based business. So I always start with the settings, as you know, and then we'll go to the items, right? I want to talk about the bundle item a little because contractors will use a group item in desktop, and that is the bundle in QBO, right? And I know the bundle item is in Essentials, but as you know, it's just plus for this kind of stuff. Because of two-sided items or double-sided items, because of passing through time, material, expense to an invoice, and also because of being able to just tag a customer to the cost so I can show it on a P&L. You need plus for those three things, right? And no, I'm not going to use class tracking for tracking jobs. I'm going to use class and location for something else. I just find that using sub-customers or projects, and we'll define the two and when to use one over the other in a little bit while, but I just think you get better reporting. We'll look at progress invoicing. I'll show you the Stacy Kildall budget decks. We'll work around at a high level. However, again, that's really just for your clients who are really into data entry and keeping up on things. If they don't want to be in QBO a lot, then I suggest like what Annette said, Red Team Software, CoreCon, or Notify. Right? Trust me, they will save tons of money in time alone, not doing the workaround. But you might have some clients that just have a few projects a week, so it makes sense, right? Okay. And then related reporting, job costing the bank feed. I know that's an odd way of phrasing things, but where can you do it? You can't do it at the rule, hint, hint. So where can you? In the feed itself. So that's like 30 seconds to show. And then the time tracking only user in the phone app. That's what we'll be looking at today. Okay? And then Y+. We've already gone over it. You've already heard this several times, so I don't need to badger it anymore. But feel free to download the deck, and probably most of your clients. I mean, Plus is most akin to Pro, right? So we're going to dive into accountant settings, and there are more settings to consider for job costing. I like to start in expenses, although in sales, you do have progress invoicing, right? Now, I'm not really using inventory. I think contractors, they might keep some, but the problem with inventory and job costing is that you can't debit COGS till you put it on a sales form. So they want to see it when they're buying it. So that's non-inventory parts or service items, and that's two-sided. So I'm not really talking much with inventory here. I think you'd agree with that one. And that would be the same in desktop too. COGS is not debited till you sell it. Now, progress invoicing for inventory parts. Progress invoicing, yes. So this is where you turn it on, and I will go over on the customer-facing invoice or customer-facing estimate. How do they see the progress? I guess it's really the customer-facing invoice. We'll look at that. It's just a couple things you got to check off. So hopefully we make that better, but it's important to know. There's no current reporting on progress invoicing at this time. It's really all the visibility of the progress is in the bottom right of the transaction, whether you're on the estimate or the invoice. But still, this is a long time gap that we've filled, and people are excited about it. You might just be doing this today just for progress invoicing. So we'll look at that one, but that's where you go turn that on. Now, expenses. We went over this a little yesterday because this is where if you're purchasing items to resell, you would add the items table to purchase forms. Right? I mean, it's already on the purchase order, which is a plus level thing, but I mean on a credit card expense, a check, a bill. It adds the items detail tab as well as the accountant detail tab. Right? So that's a plus thing. So you want that at least checked. But for us, we're going to be tracking expense and items by customer, so we can either tag it for profitability by or just to make it billable. Billable meaning I'm going to want to invoice against it. So some of you here today might just be about pass-through time expense, and it doesn't really matter about a P&L or estimate to actual, and that's great. I'm going to start with that first. But this is where you turn that on to make it happen. Okay? And then in the advanced, then I'm going to open a poll. In the advanced course class tracking, we're not talking about that today. Use it for something else. You don't really need it for this. But if you, as I always say, if you have a client doing job costing with classes and it's working, then keep it. Do not fix it if it's not broken. Okay? Automation, pre-fill forms with previously entered content, that might help for vendors. This preference, though, or setting is also for customers and employees, so, you know, it's up to you if you want to leave it on. It's not just specifically for vendors, but sometimes it helps. Right. And then again, we might have gone over in the automation webinar. If you have a client that's just all pass-through time, this is a great setting. Automatically invoice unbilled activity, right? And you can choose when, the interval when it's automatically created for any customer with unbilled time. It'll create invoices, as well as unbilled other things. If it's too global a setting, do a recurring invoice. And then you can make it specific to a customer. So I just wanted to remind you on things like that from other webinars. And I am turning on project tracking. I will be using that. However, you can use sub-customer as well. Okay? Time tracking, though also in Essentials, and thus would be time-only users would also be in QBO Essentials. So someone could be using Notify and Essentials, right? Or Red Team software and QBO Essentials for this because you're doing most of the heavy lifting for contracting and the third party, right? But in Plus, if we're just trying to do Plus, then you could turn time on and make it billable. Right, and that's where you turn that on. And those are really the preferences for job costing. Okay, don't worry, I have screenshots on that in the deck. Feel free to download it. All right, we are going to go to the products and services list. However, two-sided items. I just want to break that down quickly because you're probably using that as service items on a timesheet to pass that through, right? That was 25% of you. So, and again, COGS then can be debited right away when you purchase it, right? So non-inventory part, service items, two-sided items. But I do have categories here, and I'm going to filter this for the construction renovation type items I have here. So we'll look at like excavation, for example. Two-sided item just means there's this one item, right? And remember, within the products and services, you have the ability to have an inventory part, which we're not doing for job costing. And we already explained that why. You either doing non-inventory or service, right? So non-inventory would be great for materials, and then you have service. But the reason why I'm doing two-sided is the, oh, weird, I wish that had kept. Sorry about that. Because I have one item that can track to sales, construction revenue account, and then the, you know, whatever the COGS account is typically. Sometimes expense, but mostly, as you know, it's cost of production, cost of the work, you know, cost of whatever, construction cost, cost of goods sold. So I have two-sided items there, so I can use this item on a check or a bill or a credit card expense paying off my vendors, or it could be on a time entry that I know is non-posting. Unfortunately, at this time, I still can't tag a job to a paycheck, but I can do like a $0 check or a $0 journal entry to tag the cost, and I'll probably do that just to show you. Just debit the, well, we'll get there. Anyway, so I have this ability. The other thing I wanted to mention is definitely turn on price rules in QBO Plus for your clients, even if they're not going to use them. The reason you do that is it turns on the customer type field. And we know your contractor clients like to segment their customer base by type. Residential, this commercial, all these different things. Right? And they could do price rules for it, but I just like being able to differentiate on reports then or filter by customer type, you know. So there's that. So that's two-sided items, right? I can use the same item on both sides of the fence. Cost, revenue. Yeah, good enough. Now, I'm going to clear the filter, and there is a type of item I want to show first. And then we'll look at estimating and stuff like that. This is a bundle item. Contractors will use this because, and you know this because in desktop, it's QuickBooks Pro and up have this as well. It's called a group item. The best advantage of a group item, other than just combining a bunch of components, It's not a build assembly. You're not building and breaking it. And it's going to inherit the sales price and the cost of the component items. However, I can choose, and it's not checked, to not display the bundle components on the customer-facing transaction. So it just says whatever the sales information is and has the quantity, right? And that's super helpful, I think, because they don't need to see all the phases of the job. Now, I know my examples are super fundamental and simple, right? I got 3 items here. Your contractors are going to have 20 plus, particularly on the estimate, right? So I like and like with Premier and Enterprise, in QuickBooks Online, I can go from the estimate to the PO, QBO Plus, which is nice, and Progress Invoice. Pro, it's just, an estimate, and then that's why most people do Premier Contractor versus Pro for contractors, because of the estimate to the PO. You got like 50 or 70 lines on the estimate, right? So anyway, I like the bundle item, though I'm probably not going to use it much the rest of the day, or maybe I have it in estimate, but I wanted to show you a couple things on passing through. So there is this delayed charge form, a non-posting sales transaction. Right? Those who are here for pass-through time expense, and you're going to do a lot of invoicing, delayed charge is great. It's not a sales order or anything, but it holds the charge for a particular customer or job, if you will, right? So remember, I have that preference turned on, right? The setting, it impacts customers, vendors, and employees. The setting of pre-fill. Right, so that's why, it would be awesome if it was just for vendors, like in desktop, you have that box you can check, so it'll remember when you put in the vendor name, it'll remember what the last transaction was. And QBO, when you turn that on, it's going to be for any name, customer, vendor, and employee, so I typically don't have it on, but some of your clients might. So I have friends in the industry that tell me they do that, and they leave it on. I'm like, yeah, but it's not just for vendors, and they're like, they don't care. All right, it's up to you guys. So I can search by like construction, there's my site work demo, or actually the actual full site demo, right? And we'll say it's going to take 2 days, right? It's a delayed charge, right? The nice thing about this is that it holds it. It doesn't post yet, but I can invoice for it later. Now, some other examples of pass-through time. Let's do a bill, because I'm going to do an expense later. But just to make sure we're all aligned on billable versus unbillable. We'll say it's Clay. He's going to go out and work. Remember, it's perfect. I'm going to do account details. I could do item details, right? So that setting in expenses, it added the items tab, if you will, quote unquote, to the purchase form. That's a plus advantage, okay? It makes it more like when you're looking at a bill in QuickBooks Pro, or for you, QuickBooks Account Edition, you know how you have the expenses tab, and then right next to it in the target area it says items? Same kind of deal. That's what we're doing. In my case, let's just pay him $500 because it remembered, and I'm going to tag either a customer job or a project. In this case, it's a project, that's a job, right? And I'm using projects today. In my case, I'll just tag this job. Actually, let me do ABC. Yeah, same one. So look at the hierarchy. ABC is the main customer. Then I got customer, project, or sub-customer. It doesn't matter whether you use a sub-customer or project. It's at the end of the day, on the forms, on your reports, you can be able to filter the same way. It's going to look the same way. It's really up to you whether you want more detail, which would be sub-customer, because you can have separate email, separate address, separate name, or do you want project? Now, project is I think, the place where there's a lot of runway, and we're probably going to add a lot of features for project tracking specifically. So I think projects, one day, that's what you'll just use versus sub-customer. And yes, someone can convert their sub-customers over to projects right now. But I leave it. I leave it to be flexible, depending on what the client needs. And it's really about detail at the customer name level. Sub-customer versus project. But we'll go over that a little more. But just on the form, this is what it's going to look like. Parent-child relationship, right? Customer : job, if you will. Okay? But I'm just going to leave it to the customer level. Now, billable. That means that this cost of $500 I'm passing through to an invoice to this customer. You can do that with time, and I can do that with expense, and I can do that with material, because I could, buy some non-inventory parts to bring out there, and this might be like concrete or something, right? And this is going to be, it was, I don't know, $800. So I can tag the same customer, sub-customer, or project, make it billable, Okay? And that's just what I'm doing. And yes, there's reports. Let me just take a quick segue, and then we'll go to the invoice, and then we'll move on to estimate to actual. But there are reports that you can look at. Usually I put them up here, unpaid, unbilled. Let's go down to uninvoiced charges, uninvoiced time, right? So uninvoiced charges will show like any open delayed charges, billable expense charge, time that has yet to be invoiced, quite a bit, right? So, but this is a good report to save for that for sure. So that you can look at. I'm looking at all dates, but it could just be like today, right? And that's what I have open yet to invoice, right? Okay. So now you'll see this in several different ways. I can either go to the customer record itself, right, or the all sales window, and they have a money bar. So unbilled activity. Right? That's what you're going to see it. I think two tabs that matter today are going to be estimates. So I have some open estimates, right? Because usually the next step for us is starting with the estimate form, right? Once we do this pass-through time expense quickly, then we'll go to the estimate. But then you have the unbilled activity, right? So you can filter that way, and I can see that I have quite a bit, happening. And here's my stuff for today for ABC customer, right? I have this much in charges, this much in expenses that I'm going to pass through, unbilled amount. So helpful, and there's some columns you can add here, but I like seeing the unbilled amount as a column. And then you have, I can just create an invoice, which would make sense, create it from here. But I'm actually going to go to the plus sign, invoice, because I want to make sure we are all aligned on the drawer. And forgive me, I have so much stuff for this customer, but the drawer opens on the right. Sometimes when you go write a check and there's an open bill, the drawer will open to remind you, hey, there's a bill for this, right? So you don't duplicate the expense. On the revenue side, it's very similar. You have time, material expense, or delayed charges, or journal entries. No, not journal entries because there's no billable box. So it's time, expense, material, journal entries. No, not journal entries. What was I trying to say? Delayed charges, sorry, that are tagged to this particular sub-customer or project or customer name. And we're just making sure you don't forget, right? So I can filter by estimates, expenses, charges, whatever, right? So that's just me passing it through, right? I'm adding it to the actual invoice itself. Add. There's my charge from today, right? And notice customer won't see this, customer won't see this, customer won't see this. You can set the default markup in settings. And now I can now this is a posting transaction. Right? Save and close. So, and like we did in the automation webinar, I don't have tons of time, but remember that global setting, so for someone who's like a law firm who's just doing time and they don't really need to review it, they just want to make sure nothing's lost, that global setting of pass-through is really helpful. The other way to do it is to create a recurring transaction, like a recurring invoice to make it specific to a customer. And this is again for the 25% of you here who do pass-through time expense, right? You choose the template name, you choose the particular customer, but it's really about this checkbox, include unbilled charges. So you can create invoice templates that will recur monthly, whatever the interval you want, and it'll pick up any unbilled activity, okay? And that makes it specific to a customer instead of a global setting where it's just every single customer with unbilled time, material, expense will create an invoice for. So a couple things to consider if you're here just for like pass-through time expense today. But that ties off that, the pass-through time expense. Now real quick, I'm going to go to the customer list. Right? Job 1601 under AAG Product Specialist. This is me using a sub-customer to track the job. So you have two methods for tracking jobs in QBO Plus. In desktop, we know it's just job, right? So it's customer : job. In QBO Plus, you're going to use either sub-customer, which is the former method, or the new projects, which I'm going to use today. But I just wanted to make sure, why would you use sub-customer over projects? I would still tend to go with this if it's up to me because of the extra detail. I can have a separate email address, right? I check the box is sub-customer and bill with parent. So when the customer payment comes in, I can apply it to any invoices across all entities under this main entity, right? Because it's typical that the main company is going to pay off the invoices. And I can choose a different display name as well as a different bill or ship to address from the parent. And I think that's important to have, particularly if it's a job where you're going to the site, okay, and you're doing this over and over again, then I would just use sub-customer. However, projects is the new, right? And if I go down to beyond the basics, you'll see there's no subs under here, but it's all projects. So if I look at, all statuses, you can see all the projects we've had for beyond the basics. Why is it not? Let's see here. Completed, nothing to show, canceled. Let me just see. I might have deleted some in progress. Yeah, interesting. I don't know why it's doing that, but anyway, let's go into projects on the left. See, I have 3 in progress right now. It should have shown up under there, all statuses, yeah. So I don't know why it's not showing. On the customer record, you should be able to see all the completed stuff. But I use this customer a lot in the customer list. However, I filter by particular status. So these are the jobs we have currently in progress. But notice, if I go into the one for today, 10/03/18, and I edit it, there's not much detail here, right? It's just notes and the name. And you can have a sub-project of a project too. So, sub-customer, more detail. It's really just, you'll know your client, right? You know your client and when to use that. The nice thing about projects, and I do hope we beef this up, and it looks like this is where we're going to put a lot of the cool job costing stuff to match like Premiere over time. It's probably going to be in here, right? So projects will be the thing eventually. But what I like about it is it's a project center, one place, and I can get to many other things that are going to be connected to this project. Like, how Premier Contractor, if you know, it has this job cost center you can go into. It's really old school looking, but still visually it's still helpful to manage the progress of the job. So it's like from 2004, but it's still very helpful, right? That job cost center. But notice here I can add transactions to projects, which we'll do. I can see what transactions are already linked to this project. So I have some expense charge, I have time, I have an estimate. And I can go in and look at project profitability right away. Now, this isn't a new report. And you'll see no revenue here because we haven't received against the open estimate yet. We'll do that in a sec. But I can just keep tabs on this profitability of the job. Okay? Now, I could do that from a P&L. There's even a P&L by customer, right? And then I could filter by the particular project or sub-customer to get the same data. But the fact that it's just in the project center for this particular project, well, that's helpful. And I can see my non-billable time, which I have none yet. And I can see, because it's all billable, and I can see my unbilled time and expense, right? I have yet to create an invoice. All right. Now, if you have questions about billability versus not, let me know. But I think we've tied that one off well. If it's billable, I'm going to an invoice. If it's not, it doesn't have to be, because sometimes I just want a P&L buy, right? So I'm not checking the box for billable. Okay, good stuff. Now, let's go to transactions and look at the estimate. This is my bid or my contract. And we are doing a full site demo, and it was 2 days, or is 2 days. We haven't actually done it fully yet. We're like 50% done. Now, how would I know that? There's no way for me to track 50% done in QBO Plus. There's no cost to complete, reporting, things like that. That stuff, heavier change orders, better visibility of labor burden, just a better progress bar dashboard, that's Notify. That's Red Team software. That's CoreCon. Okay? That's not QBO Plus. But these are the things you can do, just turning some settings on. You might have clients that don't need all that yet. So how much can I do in QBO Plus? Okay. So I am using the bundle item. Sometimes I use, some non-inventory parts instead, but we're committing to 2 days. Remember, the customer won't see, it might be too faded for you to see this, but the customer won't see any of these items in the bundle in the customer-facing estimate or invoice, right? They're just going to see the name of the work we're doing, the main phase, if you will, the demolition and excavation of agreed-upon areas and home, full-day increments. 2 days, there's the rate, that's the total revenue. So what I did is, okay, so the next question is this. This is beyond just the pass-through of the profitability. So how do I get an estimate to actual report? I've estimated this much revenue, this much cost to the business, and then I'm going to start incurring some actual cost and revenue. I want to be able to see a budget to actual. So you use the budget workaround for this. It's a budget because I can subdivide by customers, sub-customers, and projects. Right? So that's the Stacy Kildall approach, and that's what I'm going to be using today for a budget to actual workaround. Again, if you have tons of projects a week, then I think you're better served with a third party because there's some data entry to consider and some time that it's going to take. It may be 45 minutes, an hour just to set up the budget, for the job. But if you just have a few projects a week, a handful of them, and you got some time to enter this, then this is great. This will work. It's still viable. There are still clients, like smaller contractors, that are doing this without a third party. But I just like to qualify that for the heavier lifting, these third-party apps are really critical when you know that your client's not going to be able to keep up on this workaround. Okay? So I have the estimate. Created it already. Non-posting. Duplicate the tab, which is what I usually do every day before I do the service-based webinar. This is the only one I really have to prep for. Maybe the automation one a little too, but anyway. And then I use the estimate to, also with the products and services list, I have that open too. I usually have 3 tabs open. I always filter for what I need it to be, because I need to see the expense and the income account. I need to see the cost to figure all this out, right? It just doesn't do it for me, like, Pro or Premier or the third parties. And then I go to a budget, which is under the gear icon, because it's an operational thing, budgeting. And here I created a budget, right? BTB 100318, that's today. I did it yesterday. And I subdivided, and I keep it really simple for myself. You'll have way more accounts, but based on the estimate that I know it's 16 hours total, so I know that the revenue is $3,600. That's what I'm going to put in that 4111 account, the construction income account that I'm budgeting. So I already have that in there, right? But I also have 1280 in the cost of goods sold, which was a burden cost of labor, because that, for these items, site work, demo, excavation, concrete, these are part of that bundle item. So I have to go and take the sales price and multiply by 16 hours, right? And then take the cost and multiply by 16 hours, right? So that's how I got the amounts. Now, so right away, it was super easy for me to do this because there's only 2 accounts. It took me about 10 minutes to put this together. But if you have 20, 25 items and they're all different accounts and different sub-cost accounts with different costs, this could take an hour, 45 minutes per job. It's just important to know. How much time do they want to spend versus how much time do they want to pay an app to do it right away? But the nice thing is when I have this budget set up, then I have some good reporting. I can look at my budget overview report, right? And this is what I'm anticipating. My net operating income from the work, from the job, should be 2320, right? 3,600 in revenue, 1280 in cost of goods sold. I know, ridiculously simple, but hopefully it's relatable. You can see it. And then you'll know when it's too much for someone, and then consider those 3 apps. Also I have, and I already saved this one because it takes a while to open because it always defaults to like the whole year. And I have a lot of budgets in here now. I saved one. It's an operational report, budget versus actual. Now it's going to be blank because there's nothing there yet. Oh no, it has some stuff, right? So I guess I already put in some info. But this is what I'm looking at. This is my estimate to actual report, right, for the project. Actual, so far, budgeted, income, COGS, so far I'm getting, over, under. This is the report they're wanting. This is the estimate to actual report in Pro. Okay, so that's why you're doing that budget workaround to get to this, right? Now, one thing I wanted to show you guys. Let me go in, and I'm using this PowerSoft app to show the phone. There are, in QBO Plus, well, Essentials too, but again, we're using Plus, and we know why. There's time-only users. So I can invite my workers as time-only users and they're going out to the job, whatever it is, pool cleaning, landscaping, what have you, or this particular heavier contractor work, and I can log into qbo.intuit.com on Chrome or Safari or Firefox on the phone. They can. And all they see is the ability to enter time for themselves. Time activity, a whole week worksheet, or a report just for them. They can't edit it after it's saved either. So and they can't see any financial information, right? So I can go time activity. In Wood 1099-C, he can enter start-stop times, or he can just do the duration. And we'll say it was like 2.5 hours so far that I've done, and I can choose, scroll down, you can even do a search if you have a long list. I'm going to choose this one project. Now I know it's time, and it's non-posting, and there's no customer project field on the paycheck yet, right? So I have to do like a $0 transaction, usually a check or a journal entry, depending on reporting. It's up to you. I'll let you guys decide that one. I have friends that say, no, it's got to be a check. And I have others that say it doesn't matter, journal entry's fine. But I'm just like debiting, crediting the same account several times to deal with payroll, right? And then debiting the job. And that's how I get it on the P&L. Pretty easy, in theory, right? It's easy to do, too. But I have, let's say they were doing, part of those, if we go down to construction, it was like site work. And billable would be passing it through, right? Non-bill would be just tagging it for the P&L, okay? No cost, location, but they can actually enter this time, right? And now I have 5 for this month, and they can even run a report, okay? While I'm on the phone, because I probably won't come back to it, and then I got another poll, let me take a quick tangent and then go to the app itself. So, but though time tracking is not in the QuickBooks app on the phone, it is if you just log into the browser, right? And this, I'm in the file, or this particular contractor is, or worker, so it's going to be data that I can use, right, in the file. Now, in the QuickBooks app, right, this is what I'm able to do. I can still see customers and projects. I can add new projects by one. I can add products and services. I can add chart of accounts, which is good. And I can add an expense and tag it to the job that way, even with a receipt attached. We would have gone over that in the Why Your Clients Want QBO webinar, like Monday. And there's invoicing, there's estimates, so you can do quite a lot. The cool thing about the estimate is, we'll go to the one that, the Beyond the Basics one here. Edit on web. Wait a minute, how come it's not? This should be the one. Give me a bunch of options there. I haven't really seen those before. Let's see if this comes up. Yes? Oh, it's on the web? I wonder why it's not letting me preview it. Because when you're previewing it, yeah, interesting. Not sure why it did that. Let me see if I can preview it. Yeah. No, I want that's odd. If I'm creating it in the, that's all I can do when I create it in product. But if you create one, let's go here. If I create a new one, I have the ability, so like I could be out at a job, right? And we'll do the 1601, okay? And then the status is accepted, and it was accepted. You can even choose who by it was accepted. So it's that. I can add a line item of what we're going to do, right? Let's just say it's, accounting consulting or whatever like that, and the quantity was like 8 hours. Done. So I can add that item. So you can build your estimate out, right? Things like that. And then when you save it, there's an ability to get a signature. I guess not if it's created from the browser. But I can click Get Signature while your contractor's out there, and Woody can sign this work. And this actually flows into QBO, the actual signature itself. Right, it's even on the actual form when you preview it in QBO. So contractors can be out on the phone. Now again, Notify, Corcon, Red Software, Red Team, they're going to have their own apps too, right? So they can be mobile and do this. But even just someone using QuickBooks Online who doesn't need that sophistication yet or complexity with a third-party app, you can do estimating. I can accept an invoice against it. Not in a progress way, but there's, it supports these types of transactions. Let me go home. And you saw what's in the left-hand panel there, right? So you can do quite a bit while I'm out as a contractor on the phone or the iPad. Now, a couple questions. How easy it is to fix the worker's time errors in the phone timekeeping app? Yeah, so you're not doing it. David, thanks for asking. There's no real way to edit the time entry on the phone. It's certainly the, it doesn't, there's no time tracking on the phone app. And I can't log in. I mean, I can log into QBO and edit it. In the browser, I can. You know, assuming I'm a company admin or something like that. I can do that. But then you're using like Chrome or Firefox on the browser and then editing the time. And just like you could do it on a laptop or a computer going into the browser. But the phone app itself, as you notice here, doesn't have time entry yet. I can't wait till it does. I mean, that's what it's really missing, I think. That and a bill. You know? Other than that, it's got, I think, enough that you could do a lot of damage using this app. I mean that in a good way. So, Dave, the answer is I would go, if I'm on the phone or iPad, I'd just go to Chrome and log in fully. But it would be like me going to the laptop. All right, Wes asked, I got tied up on a client call. I'm joining now. Is it possible to get a recording? Absolutely. I will, if you email me, Wes, I'll put in my email here. I will shoot you the PowerPoint deck and the recording. Right? And the other recording, it's on my YouTube thing that I use for other things. But anyway, so good to have the app for sure, because I can enter data. And when I go into the file, look, we should see a time charge, right? From Wood 1089C, and then I have the estimate, right? So now, Dave, I could go into the time charge as a company admin, and I could, oh, wait, he used the wrong job, right? Now I can move it to, like, you know, where it was, just as you said. But I could do this on the phone, too. It's just that it's not optimized, right? It's like I have to pinch and squeeze with my fingers and stuff, but I have the ability to edit this timesheet. But net, these time-only users, let me go into Manage Users to tie this one off, and then we'll dive into Progress Invoice and look at some reporting. The thing I like about this is that because of my level, like this time person, right, not a billable user, and he only sees his time, but he can't edit it once it's saved and closed. And in his reporting that he has a time report, but it's just for his time. All right, so when you add a user, you have in Plus, now Essentials will have time tracking only as well, but again, it's going to miss out on all this other stuff shown. But Reports Only is also a Plus only level, but they can see all reports and all balances. They just can't modify them, so know that. Okay, and then to tie off the phone app, finally, the custom user. I mean, obviously a company admin's going to be okay with the phone app, and so will this time tracking only, not with the QuickBooks app on the phone, but the browser. But someone at least needs to be this in order to access the phone, QuickBooks app. And if you have to make them all for whatever reason, because they have to make deposits or something, you can uncheck payroll access. So to make sure that was kind of new. Hopefully we have a little more sophistication with user security for sure in QBO. Okay, let me go back to my estimate. Now, creating an invoice. Click it here, or I could just, like you said, go to the invoice, put in the job or project name or customer, and the drawer opens up. We've already been over that. You've seen it. And it won't be any different for you when you do it with a client. When I create invoice, though, you do have this, progress invoice. Okay? And I'm going to do 50%, just to be normal. So this is going to create the invoice progressively. Just means I'm probably going to do this one and then 50% when the job's done. So 2 invoices against the estimate. All right? And this is fairly new. Before it was just estimate to invoice all or nothing, and you had to duplicate the estimate and do a -1. I mean, there's all these workarounds to do what you can do in Pro, in QBO Plus for a long time for those that have contractor clients, but they didn't want to spend money on third parties. But it's so many moving parts to like make this happen that I think it's easy for someone like me to forget something, make a mistake, etc., and then your just reports aren't as accurate. Or you don't know how many you've invoiced for yet, right? So I'm going to close that because there's no reason to add to the invoice. And then here's the 18. Look, it's like it's going to be 50%. So 1 day, 8 hours of each quantity, 1,800. I'm going to save it because I want to show the visibility. Angels asked, are you able to do retainage in QBO? So if you mean upfront deposit, there is a way to do that. And what I'll do, just in the essence of time, is I'll put this video in there. I'm handling upfront deposits. Let me see, Control F, upfront. Yeah, it's a similar way you do it in desktop. So you create an account for it, and then you create an item linked to that account. You use it on the sales receipt, or you make a deposit of it, whatever, the upfront. And then on the last invoice, you bleed it out, right? You put a -1 for that item at the bottom of the invoice to take out the liability. That's if you're doing it as another current liability. I mean, everybody has their own feelings on upfront deposits or retainage. Some people do like vendor deposits or other current assets, but I think for retainage, it's really another current liability account. But some will use AR for it if it's within the same period or something. There's a whole bunch of theories on that, so it's a lot to go into, but basically I'll try to show you in the chart of accounts in the item, but if you just watch that 5-minute video, you'll know how to do it. If you're talking upfront deposits or customer deposits. Retainage I know is like a 10% upfront, but I think you can use similar theory. You know, it's a liability you're holding, but you're still depositing into the checking account. So you're creating an account called retainage. You're creating an item linked to it, and then you're just using it on whatever forms to book it. In my case, it's probably a sales receipt to get it up front. And then you have to undo it, though, to clear out that liability, right, when the job's done. So you just put it on the invoice, like on the final line, right, of this invoice. Pretend this is the final one. And I would just do upfront deposit, -1 for, you know, however much they gave me up front. Let's say they gave me 1,000. Right, so it's a negative, it's a negative 1,000, sorry. You know, so that's how that's like what you do on the final invoice. Okay, but look at the video, it goes over it, and then you guys always take that stuff and do it better. So let me know if you find even a better way. All right, so I have this. I saved the invoice. At the bottom right, you have the estimate that we invoiced against, and then the total invoiced. If I go back to the estimate, let's print preview. Sorry. Let me do another poll. I'm sorry, I'm late on the poll. This one just has a lot of material in it, so I tend to forget other things. But notice, there's I know why that is. We'll come back to this. Let's go back to the estimate. In the estimate in the bottom right now, I have the estimate total, invoice subtotal, remaining subtotal. So the visibility and the progress invoicing, just to tie off this story, is on the transaction level at the bottom right of the invoice and at the bottom right of the estimate. Okay? I'm going to go back to the invoice. Okay, customer-facing transaction. This customer here, BTB 100318, is going to receive this invoice, right? I'm going to send it to him. I might even go send them the link. There's a way to share a link, right? I could turn I could turn online invoicing on. I could turn QB payments on, and they can put in ACH info or a credit card to pay this off. I mean, I think you just want to turn on payments with every client, even if they don't use it yet. It's just a way to automate getting paid, and we can go over that recurring sales receipt at the very end if you want to stick around. Because you do it too in the Your Books file. I mean, you guys can automate getting paid. You don't have to do all this AR stuff. But I know with contractors, a lot of it is invoicing against estimates. So we're going to keep going with this current methodology until it's no longer relevant, but I can't imagine it wouldn't be. Now, how do I get the client to see the progress when I send him this invoice? Right now, I have it wrong. Because you saw in the print preview, there was no due column. There was no progress. Because I had the wrong template. So I'm going to edit the current template. There is some customizing you have to consider in order for the progress invoice to show up on the customer-facing invoice. I have to have an ARI template. It has to be the ARI template. I like the bold one better, but if I'm doing progress invoicing and I want my customers to see the progress, then I have to have the ARI Classic template for now. I also need to, under Edit Print Settings, make sure this box, Fit Printed Form with Pay Stub and Window Envelope, is unchecked. I have no idea why. Then you click on Content, and the pencil icon in the target area of the form. That's the middle area. That's the item where the phases of the job, the items are. Scroll down to Show More Activity Options. By the way, I have a video on progress invoicing, so email me if you need it. It goes over all this stuff. You want to check off the box, show progress on line items, right? And then finally with the email, there's nothing there with email. Okay, so as long as I have that all set up, when I preview this form, I should see the due, 1,800 or 3,600. Here's the amount, and on the lower right, I have the estimate summary and what this invoice does and total invoice so far. I mean, I'd like to see a line that said remaining, but I think we just figure you'll figure it out. Still, all info is good to have. Another line would be nice. Like you have on the estimate on the screen. But it's still, for progress invoicing, since it wasn't there for so many years and now it's there, I mean, I'll take it, right? There's no reporting on this right now. You won't see it on the sales window, the customer record. It's really on the transactions themselves. The estimate of the invoice, the bottom right, will have the progress, okay? So there's that. Good. Now, related reporting. Let's see how we're doing. I'm going to go to the budget to actual first. This is my estimate to actual report for this project. So now I'm over budget, under on a little, percent of budget. Yeah, I get some crazy numbers there. I haven't incurred all the costs. I think we've only done like 3 or 4 hours of the 48 hours, so that's probably why. It'll come down. But at least I can see my progress if I've done that. Again, you have clients with just a handful of projects, this would work. There's no way to get rid of the 0 columns, though, unfortunately, at this time. But it's my budget to actual report versus the total. Yeah, okay. And then, the budget overview is a budget overview. Other reports. Let's look at the project profitability. That should look pretty sweet now, too. Project profitability report. Yeah, so my net income so far. So we're getting there. I still have to invoice, and I still have to put in a bunch of cost. But it's $779.91. Okay, should match the budget to actual as well. And then just reports in general, in case you're not using projects and you want to know, okay, well, how do I handle that P&L by customer? So when you go to the business overview section of reports, there is already a profit loss by customer. Customer meaning customer, sub-customer, or project. All behave the same. If you have clients that just do customer and not subs, that's fine too. You don't have to change. I like subs because it might be separate addresses and I'm doing multiple jobs for a particular commercial business. I think of landscaping for that, or construction, ongoing jobs. But I think for law firms and other type projects, it's probably fine. Okay, let's just do today, and then you would customize, filter, customer, and you're just going to go down. In my case, I think I'm going to do, all beyond the basics, but look, see how it's written out. You've seen this before in desktop. Customer : job, customer : sub-customer, customer : project. It's the same thing. Let's see how we get here. Beyond the basics. Here's what I got. Oh, that's just today. That's why. If I did like this year to date and display columns by customers, it's going to be a lot wider. So this is all the beyond the basics I've done this year so far and how I'm doing with profit and loss. Like I could see which ones are better. Like so far, these two look really good. These were the one from June, the job from June. So the jobs, wait. The July one is really nice. So what did I do there? So this is the kind of stuff we want to know, right? And you can do that with QBO Plus. Okay. Now, bank feeds. Because you're getting a lot of info from your bank and credit card that your client is, connecting. Most of your cost is coming in here. Lowe's, Home Depot, on the way out, stuff like that. Right? So how do I job cost this too? Now, at this time, with the bank rules, right, there is no way for, let's just go to Best Buy, pretend you bought some stuff from the job. There's no, when you're setting up rules, unfortunately, it's class, location, memo. Those are the extra fields other than payee and category. There's no customer field or billable at the rule level. So I can't kind of auto-man this one. I have to work the feed itself. So you are going to do this. You're going to come in and look at stuff they've purchased, Metalworks, for example, cost of goods sold, great example. Okay? Let me make this a little bigger. Customer, right? So I can tag the project and I can make it billable or not. You can only, these fields are only available in the bank feed, in the actual transaction feed line itself, not at the rule level. So I'm hoping it's at the rule level one day because, that's how you guys really auto-categorize this stuff and make sure it's the right payee. So when I come in, I can recognize 12 and I can just accept them in a batch. Like, that's the goal. But if I can't job cost it, then I have to work each individual transaction, because the rule doesn't pick up the job yet at this time. So that's important to know. Phone app estimate signature. Just to show you guys when I preview it. There's the signature, right? It comes in as an attachment from the phone. But when I preview just the document, they'll have the signature from the customer. So what I learned today, because I learned something new, as you noticed, there's no way for me to add a signature to an estimate that was created in QBO from like my laptop or computer or something like that. When I create it from the QuickBooks app on the phone or the iPad, the signature then carries forth into the file, but not the other way around. And fortunately, when contractors are out there, I was just driving by one the other day. Actually, no, we have a lot of construction going on here at Intuit Tucson, and I was walking through getting a coffee. Excuse me, the head contractor guy, the general contractor, was in a room just talking on the phone about another job. And I can just see this happening all the time, right? He's on his phone. He can literally do the estimate there and get a sig, right? Because he's answering questions or he's visiting the customer. So I think that the phone app's powerful for obviously service-based business workflow than product-based, for sure. Particularly for the contractor, the head guy that's out there and bidding, right? So probably better to do the estimates on the phone then because I can get the signature. And that flows into QBO versus the other way around. Because you saw I was trying to do it and it won't let me. Any estimate that I did like here, literally on my laptop, I don't have the same edit options on the phone. All right, so. Okay, actually, that covers pretty much everything that we were going to talk about today.